Thank you. So I don't have walk-up music and I don't have expletives. So if you're looking for those, you're going to be sorely disappointed. And I have a topic of success measures and ROI that's just so inspirational.
And there you go.
All right.
Okay. In fairness to Chris, time starts now.
So as you know, we live in the information age, and there is no shortage of the information we can gather. Whatever we want to find out, we can find it. Sometimes it's put in front of our face whether we want it or not. So how do we sift through all of that and really identify the key success measures to know if we're doing a good job or not? We like to talk about dashboards. This is what a dashboard used to look like. It used to be the key 3 or 4 pieces of information that you really needed to know what was going on, know if you were reaching your destination. This is what most of our dashboards look like today. Everything right in front of us, in our face, distracting us from where we're going, and we're dealing with all of this before we even get to the office in the morning. So again, how do we sift through all of this to know we're doing a good job? I'll give you a personal example. I'm an endurance cyclist, and much like in your car, there's no shortage of information I can have in real time on my bike. The display on the left isn't even static. It rotates so I can see speed, distance, elevation, my heart rate, what is the pitch of the climb I'm going up. Really anything I want to see. I can see GPS coordinates, exactly where I am, in real time. And if that's not enough, after my ride, I can break down every minute of the ride and put all these data points together and try to sift through that. So again, how do we make sense of all this? How do we boil it down? I'm not very smart, so I've got to simplify it for myself so I can communicate it to others. How do we boil this down? So in my personal example, when I think about the outcomes I want to achieve when I'm riding, I do it because it's fun. I enjoy it. I do it for fitness, physical and mental fitness. It's how I re-energize. It's how I clear my head and organize my thoughts. And then I do like to go fast. I don't race. I train with a lot of guys that race. When I'm out on a ride and I see somebody up ahead, I can guarantee I'm chasing them down and it feels good when I pass them. Those are the outcomes. Those are descriptive of the outcomes I want to achieve. But what do I measure? How do I know that I'm achieving that success? So for me, I found it's by tracking my annual mileage, as simple as that. And yes, it does say 5,000. My annual mileage goal is 5,000 a year. I had 4 or 5 year stretch where I was putting more miles on my bike than I was in my car in a given year. But what I found is I know if I'm consistently hitting that 5,000 miles each year, I've had a lot of fun. I'm super fit. And so this is a benchmark for me, and I reach it consistently. It always comes down to the last couple weeks of the year, and I'm out there all bundled up, and the weather's terrible and all that, but I want to get to that goal. You can see a little blip in 2016 when I broke my foot 1 week before my wedding, but that's a story for another day. But this is what's helpful to me. So how do we bring it back? Oh, and one other thing. So I'm focused on the things I talked about earlier, but I never lose sight of the things I experience along the way. So by having that goal, by having that success measure I'm trying to hit, I've experienced all these things. I've done a 100-mile bike ride around Lake Tahoe. I've spent a week riding in and around Yellowstone Park. I did a week-long ride from Montana to the Pacific Ocean. These have been transformational experiences for my life. And so you never want to lose sight of that as you're focused on the success metrics. It's just understanding what else is, what are the other unintended outcomes that are positive and can move you forward. So how do we bring that back to digital services? 3 years ago, United Way of Central Indiana was one of, I think, 9 or 10 other local United Ways that decided to co-invest in shared digital strategies. And going back 3 years ago, the things we looked at, what were the handful of things that we wanted to see as a result of that. What were we going to measure? First was cost savings. Second was campaign metrics, understanding if this shared approach was going to result in greater engagement. And then ultimately, we wanted to increase the number of identifiable donors and their lifetime giving. So those were the three things when we set out on this journey 3 years ago that we wanted to measure. So how do we measure it? Not through the Millennium Falcon dashboard that's just totally overwhelming. But again, the first one for us 3 years ago was cost savings. So I was sitting here at United Way of Central Indiana trying to figure out how we're going to elevate our digital strategies. Some of the things I realized was we needed better tools, we needed better expertise, but to have access to all that was going to be cost prohibitive for us. The only way we're going to do that is through a shared approach. And so in looking at success measures on the cost savings ROI for our investment of $200,000 a year, our best estimate was we get 7 times that in terms of value when you look at the access to the digital tools we had, digital expertise, and those sorts of things. So bring it forward to campaign metrics and donations. What we've learned over the past couple of years as we've gotten this up and running, we see higher donor retention for those who are in our digital journeys than those who aren't. We're seeing a higher win-back rate of lapsed donors than our previous efforts were able to yield. We're converting new donors, not quite the numbers that we want. The conversion rate is pretty good. What we've learned is we need a lot more people coming in that funnel to get them converted. So over the past year, we've really prioritized lead generation. So over the past year, we generated 60,000 new leads at United Way of Central Indiana. And within the past few months, we've put them on these digital journeys. So if we're seeing the same conversion rate that we have seen, we're going to see the donor number climb. But then also, thinking back to the examples of my cycling experiences that have been transformational for me, those were things that I didn't necessarily set out to do, but were a result of me committing to that goal, committing to trying to achieve that success measure that I set out to. These are all the things that have come from our experience in digital services in just 3 years. Donor segmentation that we used primarily for the digital journeys, but then we learned that we could take that information and inform all of our communication strategies. It's informed some of our fundraising strategies. Lead generation, as I mentioned earlier, in addition to the 60,000, we did a data append through digital services that yielded 30,000 more email addresses for people that were previous donors or volunteers. Shared learnings, just being able to lean on the expertise of others through the network. I mean, last weekend I'm texting one of my colleagues at another market, picking his brain on something. And so these are things we weren't doing 3 years ago when we were operating in a silo. Some of you are familiar with the corporate relations operating group work. That doesn't happen without this digital services approach designed and executed. It gave us new avenues to roll out the new United Way branding over the past year and a half. And then Philanthropy Cloud, which we've talked about today. That doesn't happen without digital services, going back 3 years ago. So these are the things that are a little harder to maybe measure with direct ROI, but these are the things that have been transformational for our United Way. And so, so in closing, I'll just sort of summarize how I think about success measures. First, have a clear goal and have a hypothesis. What do you expect to happen? What is a measurable result you expect from this action that you're taking? And then monitor and measure against that. And you're going to have some lagging indicators you're going to need to identify. You're going to have some leading indicators. You're going to have some outcome metrics, but you're going to have some outcome goals, but you're also going to want to set some process goals and make sure you're moving towards the direction you want to go. And then obviously the learning and the iterating, rinse and repeat. And again, in the learning, don't be so focused on the direct ROI that you lose sight of the other things that are happening in your organization as a result of this that are going to be transformational. So I want to leave you with those 3 things. And then again, each of us wants to see increased impact and relevance in our communities. And I truly believe the only way we're going to be able to do that is if we leverage the knowledge and expertise within the network and learn to work better together. So, thank you.